What's going on, everyone? You're listening to the Monday Post Press Conference Recap. I'm Alex Miller from The Eagle, joined by Travis L. Brown of The Eagle. This, of course, sponsored by The Ranch, Harley-Davidson in College Station. Travis, heard from Jimbo Fisher, some players after A&M's loss to Appalachian State, how they're going to try and move on from that ahead of a pretty good contest against Miami coming up this Saturday.
Yeah. Jimbo talked a lot about that offense and how they needed to execute a little bit more. That App State, was an abysmal performance by the offense. I think the most interesting thing that came out of it was we asked him a lot of questions about his scheme, the complexity of the scheme, if it's too complex for the quarterbacks. He said he feels confident at where the quarterbacks are in terms of knowing where the scheme is. But he did say, and this has happened several seasons in the past, that if it gets to points in the season where it doesn't look like one wrinkle, one concept of that scheme is working with that quarterback, they will simplify things. They'll simplify the decision-making processes that he had to say. Now, the probably most interesting thing, though, was asked that if it came to the point where he believed that they could win by him handing over the play calling duties to an actual offensive coordinator or a different play caller, would he do it? And he said yes, he wouldn't let his ego get in the way. The interesting part about that is to see when he would think that would be the next step needed to produce winning content. So that was some of the interesting parts of that from Jimbo Fisher.
Yeah, of course, Jimbo, play caller for A&M. Things have not gone well. Something you did note too was, I think we get wrapped up on the quarterbacks a lot, but even a guy like Anais Smith noting it's more than the quarterbacks when you look at certainly the offensive line play, even at running back and receiver. A&M's really got to get it shored up all around, not just at one position in particular on offense.
Yeah, it's not only is it a complex system for quarterbacks, it's a complex system for wide receivers, it's a complex system for running backs, and it's one of those deals that it's like this with just about any kind of play calling, but especially with the intricacies of how Jimbo's is, everybody needs to be doing exactly where they need to be doing and being on the same page in order for that to all click and work out. So the offensive line needs to block better. They need to block better for the running game, which will open up the passing game. Wide receivers need to run a little bit better routes. For example, you talk about one of the interceptions against Sam Houston State. He harped heavily on the fact that two wide receivers were running on the same level, which enabled the defender to defend both of them at the same time. So there is problems all the way around that need to get fixed. And that kind of played a little bit into what Anais Smith was talking about.
Yeah, I think one of the big things that players talked about was buy-in. And, you hear from a guy like Anais Smith and Damani Richardson kind of saying stuff about buy-in, and then Jimbo, of course, giving his 2 cents on what he feels the buy-in should be. What'd you make of the comments from both players and then what Jimbo had to say?
I think there is something telling there. I think that when you use terms like buy-in and energy and stuff, they're really vague, non-quantitative terms that mean something different in every instance. He went back and talked about how there might not have been that level of buy-in going into Alabama in 2020 when they did lose the game, but that was a wake-up call. There was buy-in, and they moved out and won the system. Now, buy-in could be any number of things. It could be actually spending enough time in the playbook, watching film, doing what you're supposed to do, giving that little bit of extra effort to do that. It could be working really hard at practice and not loafing off at practice. It could be, and we don't know what these things are because we're not following the players around. We're not at practice and can see what they do. But it is a pretty vague term. All that to be said, Anais Smith said he didn't feel like it was similar to that Alabama game. There wasn't that level of buy-in. So whether that be needing to get a little bit more time in the film study, needing to go a little bit harder at practice, needing to be in the playbook more, you can't really tell what that is. But yeah, it does seem like there is that everything isn't clicking at 100%, and there's probably some more work that needs to be done going forward.
Well, and heard a little bit. Jimbo said after the game on Saturday that they were going to evaluate everything, including quarterback. When asked today if he would consider playing a different quarterback instead of Haynes King, he said possibly. So that remains to be seen.
He said that all positions are open for evaluation, which I think is true, and I think that is healthy, especially if a team that is struggling, that everyone, there is an instance when things are going average and you're doing enough that, yeah, you don't want someone looking over their shoulder because you want them to have confidence, but there is some level of that competition breeds success, and this is a time that if there isn't that buy-in, if some guys aren't giving that extra 10% by doing this, that, or whatever extra little bit, then yeah, you do want competition to push that kind of extra work when it can happen. So I think everyone would agree that that needs to happen. Now, with the complexities of Jimbo Fisher's offense, it is obvious, there's two reasons why it's obvious that Haynes King won the job. He knows the offense and he knows the places to look. He knows where all the checkdowns are. He knows it better than any of the other two guys. He also has those legs that provide him escapability, and when plays break down or when plays are going against defenses give a different look than before, and it's just not the right play for that, he can use his legs to keep it from being a blown play, pick up some yards, create a little bit of improvisation. Max Johnson can do that a little bit, but Connor Wegman just hasn't had the time in the system. He just doesn't, he will be out there guessing on a lot of that, and when Jimbo Fisher talks about interceptions, the first thing he always says is, quarterback X walked over and I asked him what went wrong and he told me what was wrong, so I have confidence in him because he knew what he did wrong and he knew what the defense was doing. He just made the bad throw. And so I don't think we'll see Connor Wegman this year. There could be a time that we saw Max Johnson, but I think that needs a little bit more progression through the season to let Max get ingrained in this system a little bit more. Now, I know that's not what A&M fans want to hear, but I don't think that just plugging and playing one of these other quarterbacks in there is necessarily going to solve the problem if the problem is just getting fully ingrained in the system. Now, you could plug and play a guy if Jimbo wants to declutter some of those reads, but I don't think he's going to do that either. So it's a little bit of a back and forth there.
All right, that's going to do it for us today. Be sure to check theeagle.com for all of our coverage leading up to A&M's game against Miami this Saturday. For Travis Brown, I'm Alex Miller. We'll see you next time.